So you want that cottage garden look. You know, the one where the roses flow off the trellis in whites and pinks and purples as you walk through the garden gate. You know, romantic, charming, effortless. But here's the problem. There is a difference between charmingly informal and complete chaos.
This is just a mess. No flow, no structure, plants fighting each other for resources. But this has underlying principles working behind that casual appearance. It looks spontaneous, but it's actually carefully designed to be both beautiful and functional.
Hi, I'm Carol from Almost 2 Acres. Today I'm sharing the 5 design principles that separate successful cottage gardens from complete chaotic disaster. And yes, every one of these principles ties back to permaculture because cottage gardens really are permaculture design and always have been.
Principle 1, informal structure, but still structure. Okay, principle number 1 might sound contradictory. Cottage gardens need structure, but it should be informal structure. Here's what I mean. A formal garden has straight lines, geometric shapes, symmetry, rigid edges. You know exactly where the designer's hand has been. A cottage garden, the structure is there, but it's softer, more organic, less obvious. You still need the following. 1. Paths, but they curve gently rather than running in straight lines. They might be stepping stones through plantings rather than formal gravel walks, but you need paths, both for access and to keep that cottage charm from turning into can't walk through here. 2. Edges, but maybe it's a low picket fence that plants spill over, or a stone border that's slightly irregular, or even just taller plants naturally edging shorter ones. The edges define spaces without being rigid about it. 3. Focal points, a bird bath, a trellis with climbing roses, an arbor, a bench, something that draws the eye and gives the gardens a sense of purpose, but it's placed to look discovered, not announced. From a permaculture perspective, this informal structure is actually creating edges, and edges are where the most productive biodiverse action happens. That's where different microclimates meet, where you get the most variety in growing conditions. A straight formal border, one microclimate. A curving, irregular border with plants spilling over, multiple microclimates, sunny spots, shadier spots, protected areas, more exposed sites. The different conditions support diversity of plants and wildlife. Here's your first action step. Before you plant anything, mark out your pathways, even if it's just flour on the ground showing where you'll walk. Create gentle curves. Make sure you can actually access your plants for harvesting and maintenance. That's your bones. Everything else will fill in around them. Principle number 2, layering, or what permaculture calls vertical stacking. Cottage gardens are famous for their layered look, and there's a reason it's not just aesthetic. When you layer plants at different heights, you're using the same square footage to support more biodiversity and get more yields. Think about a forest, the permaculture garden model. You've got tall canopy trees at the top, understory trees below that, shrub layer, herbaceous plants, ground covers, root crops below ground, climbers using the vertical space. A cottage garden does the same thing on a smaller scale. The layers in a cottage garden. First you have the tall layer, 4 to 6 feet or more. Hollyhocks, delphiniums, tall climbing roses on trellises, sunflowers, angelica. These create height, drama, and vertical interest. In permaculture terms, they might also provide shade for plants below, windbreaks, or support for climbers. Second, your mid layer, 2 to 4 feet. Garden phlox, roses, peonies, daylilies, bee balm. This is your workhorse layer. Lots of bloom power here. These often provide most of your cut flowers and pollinator support. Third is your low layer, under 2 feet. Catmint, dianthus, lady's mantle, hardy geraniums, lavender. These edge your beds, fill in gaps, often have longer bloom times, and many are great ground covers that suppress weeds. Fourth is your ground layer, creeping thyme between stepping stones, violets under shrubs, self-seeding Johnny jump-ups. These fill in the cracks and use space that would otherwise just be bare soil or mulch. Fifth is your climbers, sweet peas, clematis, climbing roses, morning glories. These use vertical space on fences, walls, trellises, space you'd otherwise be wasting. Here's the key. You want all these layers working together in the same bed, not separate areas for tall plants, separate areas for short plants. Intermingle them. Why? Because from a permaculture perspective, you're maximizing yield per square foot. You're growing in 3D, not just 2D. You're creating more habitat niches. Different pollinators prefer different heights. You're improving microclimate. Tall plants can shelter more tender ones. You're using resources efficiently. Different root depths mean plants aren't all competing for nutrients at the same level. Here is your second action step. When you're planning a bed, literally draw 3 horizontal lines on your garden plan. One for tall plants, one for medium, one for low. Make sure you have something in each layer. Don't just plant all medium height plants and wonder why it looks flat. Principle 3, color harmony. This is where Gertrude Jekyll really made her mark, and it's still relevant today. A cottage garden can handle a lot of color, way more than a formal garden, but there still needs to be some thought behind it. Otherwise, you get visual chaos that's actually stressful to look at rather than charming. You've got 3 main approaches. First, analogous colors, colors next to each other on the color wheel, purple, lavender, pink, and blue together, or yellow, orange, and red-orange. This creates a harmonious, calming effect. It's very romantic and traditional cottage garden. Second, complementary colors, opposites on the color wheel used for dramatic pops. Purple and yellow, blue and orange. This is more energetic, more exciting. Use it in smaller doses or specific garden rooms. Third, monochromatic, different shades of the same color. A white garden, or all pinks from pale blush to deep magenta. This is very sophisticated, and it lets you focus on texture and form. Now here's where it ties into permaculture. While you're thinking about color, you're also choosing plants that bloom at different times, right? You want that color scheme to work from spring through fall. So you're not just picking plants for color. You're picking for bloom time, succession of blooms, pollinator value. Different colors attract different pollinators. Multiple uses. That purple might be lavender, which is pretty and useful. Site appropriateness. Those plants that want to grow in your conditions. The color is the framework, but you're layering in all these considerations at the same time. Here is your third action step. Pick one color scheme for each bed or garden area. Write it down. Then choose plants that fit both your color scheme and your functional goals. Don't just grab whatever's pretty at the nursery. Have a plan. Principle 4 is one of my favorites because it's pure permaculture. Embrace self-seeding. Remember, the original cottage gardeners didn't have money to buy new plants every year. They chose plants that would self-seed reliably, giving them free plants season after season. That's catch and store energy. The plant does the work of propagating itself. Great self-seeding cottage garden plants include foxgloves, biennial, so they need to self-seed, Verbena bonariensis, columbine, spinach, Swiss chard, Johnny jump-ups, sweet alyssum, dill, cilantro, forget-me-nots, larkspur, lettuce. I'm not telling you to let everything go completely wild. That's how you end up with a garden that's 90% one aggressive self-seeder. Here's how to manage it. The first year, let your self-seeders go to seed. Don't deadhead everything immediately. Let them set seed and drop it. The second year, you'll get volunteers. Here's where you have to make decisions. Keep the ones that are in good spots. Maybe they filled a gap you didn't know you had. Pull the ones that are in the way or crowding something else. You're essentially letting the plants tell you where they want to grow. They're finding the microclimates that suit them, but you're still the editor, keeping things from getting out of hand. Your fourth action step, choose 3 to 5 self-seeding plants that fit your color scheme and growing conditions. Let them go to seed this year. Next year, you'll have a more filled-in garden with 0 additional plant budget. Principle 5, generous plant density. Cottage gardens are full, like really full, way more densely planted than most modern gardens. When you plant densely, you're, number 1, suppressing weeds naturally. The plants shade out weed seeds so they can't germinate. Less weeding for you. That's working smarter, not harder. 2, creating a living mulch. Those dense plantings shade the soil, keeping it cooler and moister and reducing evaporation. You water less. 3. You're supporting more biodiversity. More plants means more flowers, means more pollinators, more beneficial insects, more bird habitat. 4. You're getting more yield. This is permaculture's obtain a yield principle. Same square footage, more production, whether that's flowers, food, or ecosystem services. There is a trick to this. You can't just cram plants together randomly. You need to understand their mature sizes and make sure they're compatible. Some plants, like catmint or hardy geraniums, you can plant closer together than the tag says because they mingle nicely. They don't mind touching their neighbors. Other plants, like peonies or larger roses, need their space and get sulky if crowded. And you need to feed them well. Dense planting worked in cottage gardens because those original gardeners composted everything, keeping the soil fertility high. You can't densely plant in poor soil and expect success. Here's your strategy. Start with good soil, lots of organic matter, good compost. Plant in drifts of 3, 5, or 7 of the same plant. Odd numbers look more natural, but plant those drifts closely. Choose a mix of 1. Long bloomers that flower for months, catmint, roses, salvias. 2. Short bloomers with other features, such as peonies that have great foliage even after they bloom. 3. Different bloom times so something's always flowering. 4. Different growth habits so they layer and mingle well. Here's your 5th action step. When you're spacing plants, ignore the nursery tag that says 18 to 24 inches apart. For most cottage garden perennials, you can go 12 to 15 inches. Yes, really, they'll fill in faster and look better. Okay, let's review the 5 principles. Informal structure, curves, soft edges, discovered focal points. Layering, tall, medium, low, ground covers, and climbers all working together. Color harmony, pick a scheme and stick to it. Self-seeding, let nature do some of the propagation work. Generous density, plant full, feed well, water less. When you follow these 5 principles, you're not just creating a pretty garden, you're creating a permaculture system that works with nature instead of fighting it, requires less input over time, supports biodiversity, gives you multiple yields, becomes more beautiful and productive each year. In our next cottage garden video, we're getting practical. I'm walking you through how to actually plan your cottage flower and vegetable mixed garden, starting with a blank slate, assessing your space, mapping sun and shade, figuring out how many plants you actually need, and creating a realistic plan you can implement.
Don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss the next one. And let me know in the comments, which one of these design principles is going to be the hardest for you to implement in your garden? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to do all those action steps above so that you keep up with us while we're designing your cottage garden. Until next time, let's get strategizing.